DreAllDay.com.
I got a confession to make. This is the best show out there. Ladies and gentlemen, you are tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. This is the go-getter energy that moves anyone to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. We put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one show, one masterclass, and we call it Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic, how to steal ideas. Yes, this is something that I suggest that you do, steal ideas. It's something that you already do. You already steal ideas, but there's an art to stealing ideas. It's not just steal it and then go use it and then, no, not that. There's an art to actually stealing ideas, because no idea that comes out is 100% original. Nobody that's putting anything out is doing something that's 100% never been done before. Everything is some version. It's coming from some incarnation of something that has come before. Now, maybe you know about it, maybe you don't, but no idea is 1000% original. But there's an art to stealing, and there's a way to do it the right way that ends up creating something brand new that produces value for everyone involved, even the person that got their idea stolen from. The last couple days, we've done a 2-part masterclass series on social skills, how you can tell when someone is strongly or very well socially equipped. I told you at the top of that I stole the concept from some random guy on Twitter who I never even heard of. He had made it into a list. I made it into a 2-part masterclass series. He made it a hot line. I made it a hot song. And listen, I steal concepts all the time, but there's an art to it, and that's today's topic. And I'm going to refer you up front to a book that you can go get on Amazon while you're listening to me right now. It's called Steal Like an Artist. It's written by a guy named Austin Kleon. Everything you're getting from me today, though, is not from some random dude on Twitter, and it's not from Austin Kleon's book. Everything is coming from me directly, just to be clear, and that leads right into what we're going to talk about here. So let's get right into our point so I don't step on anything here today. The topic, once again, is how to steal ideas. There are levels to this shit, all right, as we say. Point number 1, steal, then adopt and model. Do not copy. Let me say it again. This is the most important point of stealing ideas and the art of stealing ideas. You steal the idea from someone. So you see someone doing something, it sparks a thought in you. You get an idea like, you know what, I could do something similar to what that person's doing. So you steal the idea, now it's in your head. Now the next step is you must adopt what you stole to how that's going to work for you. So what that guy did, a random guy on Twitter, he posted something. He posted a 10-point Twitter post. I stole the idea. I said, you know what? Those are actually good points. I need to share that with my audience on the Work on Your Game show. And then I asked myself, all right, so how am I going to adopt this? I can't just tweet it and act like I made it up. I retweeted it because I like what he said, but that's giving him credit. How do I take this and make this into something on my own? I said, how do I adopt this to what I do? All right, so what I'm going to do is put it on this masterclass here called Work on Your Game. But for me to do that, I can't just recite a list of 10 things. It'll take like 60 seconds and the show will be over. I need to flesh this out and actually support it with content that I've already created, support it with masterclasses that I've already done, support it with explanations and examples and stories, which is exactly what I did. So I adopted it and then I modeled and adopted at the same time. So I was modeling what he created, but I adopted it to work for me, my style, and the way that I communicate with my audience. Maybe his main thing is doing tweets. Maybe his main thing is something else. I don't know. I don't even know who the guy is. But I adopted what I saw from him. Again, he made it a hot line, and then I made it into a hot song. This is the most important thing you do when you steal, is that you're not copying what the other person does. Your stuff should not look and sound and feel exactly like whomever you got it from's material. It needs to become your material. You can credit them for where you got it from, but yours should be something completely different from what they did. Copying other people's shit is, first of all, plagiarism. It can get you kicked out of college. I've seen that happen to people if you plagiarize something. And, in the business world, it can get you arrested if you violate something that somebody else owns without giving them proper credit, or just violating it, period. Even if you gave them credit, you're still not allowed to just copy their stuff. So do not copy other people's stuff. Do not do that. Secondly, when you're copying other people's stuff, you're just copying, just plainly copying. You're not making anything new out of it. You can never be anything more than a cheap imitation of someone else if all you're doing is copying. And I would assume that you being a person listening to this, you're not a person whose aim that you're looking at your ceiling as being a cheap imitation of another person. That's all you can be when you copy. That's the best you can do, is be a cheap imitation of the person you're copying from. If that's all you're doing, if you're not adopting it and making it into your own. Who wants to be that? I don't think anyone who's listening to me. Third, when you copy without adopting and modeling and making it into something new, your energy is weak because you're not being genuine. And people can see through your bullshit. People can see through someone who's just copying, someone who's just saying what they heard somebody else say, someone who's not really speaking from their true selves. You're just saying something because you heard it and you believe that it's going to go over well with an audience, or you've seen it go over well with one audience, so you think it'll go over well with, you know, whatever audience you happen to have. People can see through that. People have a sixth sense. All of us, we have a sixth sense for bullshit. We have a sixth sense from when someone's energy is weak. We have a sixth sense from when someone is not being their true selves. We can tell. We may not be able to tell what they're being, but we can tell they're not being who they actually are. All right. So whenever you're doing that and you think people are noticing, guess what? They are noticing. And whenever you felt like you've noticed that from another person, guess what? You're right. You were absolutely noticing that from another person. You can tell when someone's being who they actually are and when someone's putting on a show. You know, some people are better at it than others at putting on that show, but you can still tell if you pay attention closely enough when someone's just giving you, they're just putting on something just to entertain their audience, and when someone's being who they really are. Now, when you find someone who can do both at the same time, they're not faking, but I mean entertaining an audience and being their genuine selves. They're entertaining by being their genuine selves. Well, that's when you get magic. That's when magic gets made. So, like I said, I stole the idea for the signs of having strong social skills. But again, all that guy had was a list. It was just 10 points. Who fleshed it out? Who added all the examples? Who added all the references? Who added all the stories? Me. That's who. I'm the one who did that. When I steal an idea from someone, I always make it into something that is so new that the only way you know that I stole it from someone is because I told you. All right, that's how you steal from somebody. The only way anybody should even know where you got it from is because you said, you know what, my inspiration for creating this was I heard this person say this, or this woman wrote this in a book, or I heard this guy say this in a speech. People should only know it because you pointed it out and you gave that person credit. And if you steal with integrity, you adopt and model with integrity, you should not have a problem crediting the person from whom you got the idea, because first of all, that's where you got it from, so give them credit. Second of all, because what you created from what they inspired you to do is so new and so different from what they put out that even if they found out about it and they looked at it and they had a legal team look at it looking for a reason to sue you, they couldn't come up with a reason to do so because yours is so much different from what they originally created. See, if you're afraid or apprehensive about letting the person that you stole from know that you stole something from them, it's probably because you didn't create anything new. It's probably because you just straight up hijacked what they did and just straight up copied it and acted like you came up with something brand new. I'll tell y'all a story about 7 years ago. Nike did this basketball game, right? It was called the Summer is Serious basketball game. It was held in Brooklyn, New York, and they had all these basketball influencers. They had us come to New York, and they took us all around the city, and we're doing all these different things. We stayed at Sheraton Times Square. We went to the Nike store, and they gave us all this stuff. They gave us all this Nike gear, all these pairs of Nike basketball sneakers. Kevin Durant and James Harden were involved. We got to meet those guys. They were the coaches. We played this little exhibition type basketball game amongst a whole bunch of other games that Nike was putting together in Brooklyn for this whole particular campaign of the Summer is Serious. Nike put a lot of money into this campaign, and for you to get chosen to play in this, Nike put out like this open call. Make a video that shows why you're a person who should get chosen for the Nike Summer is Serious game. So all these people put out videos. I went and made a video because when I first heard about it, I'm like, shit, I fucking created putting basketball video on the internet. They can't have this game without me. So I went and made my own video where I'm showing highlights of me doing different stuff, and I had all this footage already. So I just chopped up a bunch of footage, made it into this montage video, and it was a hot video. And if you go on not Nike but YouTube and look up Dre Baldwin Summer is Serious, you can see that video. I made two of them actually. One, the first year they did, then the next year they did the event again, and I'm gonna get to that in a moment. So the first year I did my video and I ended up getting chosen. And I went to the Summer is Serious event and all that. And you can see the videos on YouTube from before the event. You can see my recap videos from after the event. But this is what happened. The next year, Nike did the Summer is Serious event again. And this time they held it overseas. I forget where it was. I believe it might have been in Spain or something. Instead of having it in Brooklyn like they had the first year. Next year they had it in Spain. And I believe this time it was just for the influencers basketball game, or I think they had pretty much exhausted the influencers. It was like 30 of us the first time. So the second time wasn't many influencers left, unless they were going to pick us to play again. So I asked Nike when they first put the campaign out, I said, hey, can someone who played last year get chosen to play again? And Nike said, yeah, you can get chosen to play twice. And they were bullshitting because they didn't choose anybody to play again who had played the first time. So they were lying. They should have just said no. But then I went and made another video because I wanted to play in it again. And I came up with a whole brand new concept for this second video. And again, you can find this video on YouTube as well. But here's what happened. Because when people would submit their videos the second time around for the second Summer Serious event, Nike would sometimes retweet and post the videos. Like, hey, here's a nice video from this guy, or this girl put out this video. This person made this video. Hey, they might make it, teasing to get everybody else, enticing everyone else to put their videos out. So some dude who I do not know, he put out a video for the second Summer Serious game. And they were saying this guy made a good video. So I went and watched the video, and would you believe, this motherfucker copied my whole fucking video. I mean, every fucking segment of my video. I'm talking from the first minute to the last second. Every single thing that I did in my video, he copied it and put it in his video. The whole fucking thing. The whole thing. Do you understand when I say the whole fucking video? He copied the whole. And I remember watching this video and I really couldn't believe it. Like, this dude really went and made a carbon copy of what I did. Now, he made his own footage. So where I did a dunk, he did a dunk. Where I did a jump shot, he did a jump shot. Where I cut away from the on-the-court footage and showed me talking, he cut away from the on-court footage and showed himself talking. He copied my whole video, right? And this is out there, and I'm looking at the name, and I go look through my archives because, I've been using the same email account and, of course, YouTube all these years. And I go look through the archives and the things like that, and I see that this guy actually knows who I am because he's emailed me before. He's left comments on my video before. This person knows who I am, obviously been following my stuff, obviously, because he copied all my shit. And never said anything. This person never reached out to me and said, yo, Dre, your video from last year inspired me to make this video, or, would you give me your blessing to, model what you did in your video? Well, first of all, the person couldn't have done that because he didn't model it. He straight up copied it. He hijacked it. If this was business, if I was selling that video, I would have sued this dude or sent him a cease and desist for copying my shit, like blatantly copying everything. It would have been an open and shut case. We wouldn't even went to court for that. And I'm telling you all that to tell you this, don't do that. All right, what that guy did, don't do that. You should be able to go to the person who inspired your work and tell them, yo, your work inspired this. Look what I created from it. And they will appreciate it because they see that you took it to a different place. But if yours is exactly the same and they see that you just copied it and didn't put any creativity into it, then you would be ashamed to even let them know because you know what you did. Like this guy right here that I'm referring to. Anyway, let's move on to point number 2. Today's topic is how to steal ideas in an original way. Point number 2 leads us right into that. Be original. All right, this is the second point. Be original. Do not just take somebody else's stuff and do the exact same thing to the point that you wouldn't want them to know that you did it, or you wouldn't let them know that you did it because you know that what you did was not original at all. Before I started blogging, now I mentioned before that I started blogging. That was the first thing I did online for the public, was blogging. That was before YouTube. It was before podcasting and whatever else may come in the future. Before we even had this phrase social media. Before we even had the phrase content, I was blogging. This was back in 2005. And there were only 2 other, at that time, basketball players who were blogging on a regular basis. And I'm talking about people who are actually sitting down at a computer and actually writing out blogs and putting their own original content up on the internet. So I'm not talking about some athlete gets interviewed and then they put it up and say, oh, this person has a blog. The NBA did that a whole lot over the years with a few athletes. Gilbert Arenas was one in particular, where Gilbert Arenas technically had a blog, but Gilbert Arenas was not sitting down and writing anything. He would talk to somebody, they would transcribe it, then they put it up and say, hey, here's Gilbert's blog. That doesn't count. All right, if you're not actually sitting and writing. And his didn't sustain. His only lasted for a month or 2, and then they stopped doing it. I'm talking about somebody who was actually sitting down, writing, and creating their own shit all the time. There were 2 guys. One of them was named Paul Shirley. Now, Paul Shirley he's a 6'11" guy. At the time, he was playing for the Phoenix Suns. And he was sitting at the end of the bench. He was like one of the last guys. He was one of those guys, if you go to a game and you see the guy standing up waving the towel, but you don't even know their name because their names on the back of the jersey, but because they got their warm-up jacket on, they never take it off because they don't get in the game. You can't see their name. That was him. That was Paul Shirley. And somehow the NBA found him and asked him to write a blog. And his blog was like fucking amazing. You can go look this up. It's still online. His name is Paul Shirley. His last name is Shirley. He's about a 6'11" white dude from like Iowa. And he was playing for the Phoenix Suns back when Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire, those guys were the team. The Suns were a really good team. Paul Shirley was at the end of the bench, and he had a blog. So I don't know who at the NBA was genius enough to figure out this was a good guy to have blogging, but it was a great perspective. Instead of having like the superstar player blog, and a lot of times superstar players, when they blog or put stuff out in the public, is very vanilla and bullshit because they got to protect their image. But a guy at the end of the bench like Paul Shirley, he had no image to protect. He could just say whatever the fuck he wanted to say. And that's what made his blog so amazing. And this is why Paul was one of my inspirations, and this is why I'm mentioning him. And his blog didn't last that long, but again, I suggest you go read it. So he was one of the guys who was blogging. He still writes to this day. I don't know what Paul's up to now. I haven't looked him up in a while. But I emailed him. I think I emailed or commented to him once or twice. But his writing was, the last I saw of Paul, he was writing like a novel type and fiction type of writing. So he wasn't writing the kind of stuff that I write. Mine is more cultural stuff, like talking about what's going on and things that I experienced in my life, those kind of writings. But Paul was he was a different type of writer. But anyway, he was one. And the other guy who was blogging at that time was another guy who was about 6'11". This guy was black. His name was Roderick Benson, or for short, Rod, R-O-D, Rod Benson. Now, Rod was kind of like building a following and building a brand before we were even calling it building a following and building a brand. He had T-shirts. He was making little rap songs on YouTube, and he was really funny. He was a very entertaining type of dude. And Rod had played at University of California. And then he had played in the G League, or back then it was called the D League. He had played overseas. He might still be playing actually to this day. I never met Rod, never had an exchange with him. I seen him a time or two when I was I believe in LA, or once or twice. I saw him, but I didn't have any kind of exchange with him. But he was the other guy who was blogging. And Rod's blog was more closer to what type of writing that I do, where he was just talking about his own experiences, what he went through. His stuff was really irreverent, very funny. He was more on the humorous side of blogging, not more serious type topics, at least back then. I don't know what Rod is doing now. I got to look both of these guys up when I'm done with this recording. But these were the only two guys who were blogging back then. Paul Shirley and Rod Benson, two 6'11" guys by chance, and both basketball players. So Paul was in the NBA at the end of the bench. He played overseas in a few places. Rod I knew he had played D1 at Cal. Then he had played D-League back when it was the D-League, and overseas, and he might still be playing to this day. I don't know if Paul's still playing. I don't think so. He's a little bit older. Now, both of them, as I just explained to you, they had their own style. And they both, because I saw them blogging and they were basketball players, I said, I'm a basketball player. I like writing shit. I'm going to start blogging. And so they inspired me to do it, these two guys. But my writing, number one, sounds absolutely nothing like either of these guys' writing. If you read anything either of these dudes ever wrote, and then you read anything that I've ever wrote, you can tell that these are two completely different people. All right, if it was a blind test, you didn't know who the author was, and you just read it, you said, okay, I don't know who wrote piece number 1 and piece number 2 and piece number 3, but these are 3 different people. This is not the same person who wrote any of these. And that's one thing, that mine is completely distinct from theirs. And 2, I've been more prolific than both of them. I've written more books than both of them put together, and more articles than both of them put together. That's just a fact. So shout out to Rod and shout out to Paul. When you steal, this is the point, you must do something with what you stole that has not already been done, especially if it hasn't been done by the person you stole from, because then you become a plagiarizer. You're just copying, or in hip hop we call that biting. You're not supposed to bite off of what somebody else has already done and then just make a carbon copy of it and then say you created something. You didn't create shit. Make your own creation that is completely unique from whence you got it, from where you got it. It must be completely unique from that. When you steal, you are stealing for inspiration, not as the full product of what you're going to claim you, quote, created. All right, close quote. That's bullshit. I shouldn't be able to tell where you got your inspiration from by looking at it and listening to it and reading it, because then it's like, all right, what are you doing? How are you going to call yourself a creator if all you're doing is just making a carbon copy of what was already out there? If you were to read me, again, you read my articles, you're not going to say, oh, you sound like, and then name somebody else who writes stuff, because I don't sound like anybody. because nobody else told me to write the way that I write. I'm writing the way that I think and the way that I talk, and it's completely distinctive from anybody else out there, whether it's a podcast, YouTuber, video, author, blogger, whatever. Nobody else, if anybody sounds like me, it's because they sound like me. It's not me sounding like them. And it should be the same way with you when it comes to getting your inspiration from another person out there, if there is someone in particular who inspired you to do what you do. Point number 3. Today's topic is how to steal ideas. If you're going to steal ideas, here's the way to do it. Number 3, you got to put more into the game than you are taking out of the game. So when you are stealing, again, in the artful way, what you end up producing needs to add to the game. The game should be in a better space after you put out the things that you created, rather than the game being in a worse space because all you're doing is stealing from somebody who actually did something creative and you didn't do shit. In other words, if you're stealing artfully, put more out there than what you're taking away, than the things that you've been inspired, the things that you've been inspired by. Back in the 1990s, for example, in hip hop, a lot of people would criticize hip hop mogul Sean Puff Daddy Combs, who I talked about in my Virtual Mentors episode number 195. Virtual Mentors number 1, Sean Puff Daddy Combs. A lot of people would criticize Puff because a lot of the hit records that him and his label was putting out, they would sample old R&B records and then speed them up and make them into rap records. And nobody had done this before. So now I just kind of stepped on it. First of all, Puff Daddy, even though he's being criticized for this, nobody had done it before. Nobody had taken old R&B records, sped them up, and made them into brand new rap records and made them into hit songs. He was the one who pioneered that. Now, maybe he wasn't the first one to ever try it, but he was the one who actually pioneered it and made it into something that a whole bunch of other people started creating, started copying, started modeling after his stuff. And Puff Daddy made a whole lot more new stuff than what he took from. So even though he took from several songs that you can listen to and say, oh, he got that from this song and this song and this song, he created 100 times more new stuff than the number of things that he was modeling from, or if you want to call it stealing from. This is what a true artist does. A true artist creates new things for the next generation to follow and steal from and to be inspired by. That's what a true artist does. A true artist creates their own sound, creates their own feeling, creates their own energy. They create their own template so that when the next person comes around, you can tell that the next person was inspired by that previous guy. Even though the previous guy stole some things from a previous generation or was inspired by something somebody else did, they create so much new stuff that they spawn their own followers. They spawn their own apprentices, people who are inspired by them and steal from them in certain ways, and then you can feel their influence in a whole generation of other individuals out there. So you, as the artist who's going to steal, and you're going to learn to steal artfully, as I've explained here in this class, you got to create in such a way that everybody else who comes after you, people who are inspired by you, everybody can see traces of you in their DNA. Everybody can see your DNA in what they create and in what they put out there, even though, again, you took a little bit from other people. That's the way that the game grows. The game does not grow just by one person coming out and copying what somebody else did and not doing anything new, not adding anything to the game. The game only grows when every next generation that comes out takes a little bit from the previous generation, and then you create a whole lot of new stuff for the next generation. That's the way the game is growing. If you're not doing that, that means you are taking away from the game, you're taking up space, and you're in the way, and you need to get the hell out the way. Let's recap today's topic, which is how to steal ideas. There is an art to stealing ideas. Just like I told you the last 2 days that I stole this whole concept of 10 signs of strong social skills from some person on Twitter. But listen, there's an art to it. It's not just about taking it and putting it out yourself. There's an art to stealing, and that's what we're talking about here today. A book I want to refer you to, as I already said, Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. Make sure you go read that book. Everything you're getting here today, yesterday, 100 days ago, and 100 days from now is all from me, though. Be clear. I don't need to steal anything from anybody because I create more than everybody. Which leads us into our first point. Number 1, steal, then adopt, and then model. Do not copy other people's stuff. Like this clown basketball player who just copied my whole video to get himself selected for the Nike game. And you know what the kicker of the whole thing is? His bum ass didn't even get selected for the game, even after he copied my whole shit. Copying other people's stuff is, first of all, plagiarism. It would get you kicked out of college. You do that in college. It can get you arrested in the business world or sued. probably not arrested, but sued in the business world if you copy somebody else's stuff without proper credit. Don't do it. Secondly, you can never be anything more than a cheap imitation of someone else when you copy, and nobody wants to be that. And third, your energy's weak when you're copying somebody else's stuff because you're not really being your true self. Like I said with that social skills list that I did over the last 2 days, he made it a hot line, I made it a hot song. I took a piece of what he created and I created a whole new thing out of that I would be happy to show it to him and say, hey, look, you inspired this, but look how I fleshed it out and made it into something new. He would appreciate it. That's how you steal. Point number 2, be original. Before I started blogging, there were 2 other basketball players who were blogging. Both of them had their own style, and they inspired me to do it, but my writing sounds nothing like theirs, and I'm more prolific than both of them. In other words, they inspired me, but I went and took it to a whole new level. You got to make whatever you steal into your own creation that is so unique from where you got it that people shouldn't even be able to tell where you got it from originally unless you tell them, the way I've been telling you today. Number 3, put more into the game than what you take out of the game. In other words, if you're going to steal artfully, you need to be making more art in the game that you're taking from the game. The same way that Puff Daddy, as a producer, was taking old records and making them into new records. He made so many new records of his own style that you couldn't say that all he did was copy from other people's stuff, because he created so much of his own original stuff that a whole new generation, the next generation, they were following him rather than being able to say, well, oh, you only copied from them, that's the only reason you were good. Nobody could say that about him. He created a whole lot of new stuff, and that's what a true artist does. You create new things for the next generation to follow and steal from and be inspired by. If you're not doing that, then you're not actually a true artist, and you are not stealing, you're plagiarizing. And if you're plagiarizing, you're going to end up getting sued. You might end up out of business, and your audience is not really going to believe you because your energy is weak, because you're not really being the true version of yourself. Don't make that mistake. Work on your game. Dre all day.